In the past 2 years, I've spent over 1,000 hours vibe coding. I was there before Claude Code, Cursor, Codex even existed. I even used to sit inside of ChatGPT to get it to create code, and then I would sit there and spend hours copy-pasting it back and forth. My name is Albert, and I didn't go to university, and I'm not very technical. But with vibe coding alone, I managed to build my agent that has done $90,000 months. And it, I'm even going to show you the Stripe dashboard. You can see if I set it to the last 12 months, build my agent.io has done $614,000. And if I set it to all time, it has done almost 700k. And I can refresh this so you can see that it's legit. I've seen from the start how fast this space is actually moving and how good these AI models are getting all of a sudden. And I'm sure of one thing. Learning how to utilize these AI models is one of those opportunities that I'm probably never going to get in my life again. I've made a lot of mistakes, some costing tens of thousands of dollars. In this video, I'll save you from all of those mistakes so you don't have to make them too. And I'll show you my strategy to building that I use in every single project that I do. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. This is the one mistake that have wasted me hundreds of hours and costed me tens of thousands of dollars in payroll to my developers. Most people, when they use these coding models, make this main mistake, which is when they want to build out any project, they just start building straight away without doing some very important work first and without creating the foundation. So what happens is that they just go directly into Claude and they start building. No planning, no discussing with Claude first what tech stack to use, no pre-built skills, they just start building straight away. And what happens is that they're going to get good results in the start. All of a sudden they have a decent project built out, and then they build out another feature, and then they build out another feature again without doing any kind of planning. They just tell Claude, now build out this, now build out that. But what happens down the line, all of a sudden their project is a mess. They're using the wrong tools. And when they then try and build out the next thing, it doesn't work. Because if they build this out, then it collapses. And the reason for that is that they have not built a good foundation. What you do instead is that you spend a lot of time on the foundation. And we're going to go over exactly how you do that in this video. This is honestly the most important thing that you have to learn about vibe coding. But you learn how to plan out a good project. What is the best tech stack? Like, what should I actually use to build this project? You figure out the structure, sort of the actual code structure of the project before you even start building anything. You add comments to your code file, not so you read it, but so the AI can read it and get context instantly. And then you also create an overview of your project, so when Claude needs to find something, it can just check that overview and instantly gather the context that it needs. When you create a foundation like this, and you actually spend a lot of time doing this, like this stage right here takes hours. You don't start building right away. Then when you build the next thing, you also spend a bunch of time planning, and it looks like this, and then this, as you build out features. And all of a sudden you have something with way higher stability, and you don't end up at this stage right here where you're basically forced to rebuild the entire thing again and do it the right way. It's one of those things where if you don't spend the time at the start, you'll be spending the time later. And later it's going to take 10x the amount of time either to transform this into this or starting from scratch. But lucky for you, you have this video, and I'll show you exactly how to build the right way. If you do this next mistake, then you will go broke. A common misconception that I see is to use ultra-think. What ultra-think does is that it uses extra effort. It basically forces the model to think longer. The issue with ultra-think is, however, that when you force the AI to think for longer, it also has a higher risk of hallucinating. And on top of that, you're also forcing it to use more tokens, which means that you're going to be spending much more money in credits. The solution is not to force Claude to think for longer. You actually don't want Claude to be spending that many tokens, especially not when you want to build something out. And this is also connected to what I just showed you before. You need to have a good workflow. Most people's workflow right now is that they just write a prompt and then they go straight to building. And then they maybe also set it to ultra think because they think they're going to get better results. So it's going to spend a shit ton of credits doing all of this in one take. That is a terrible workflow, and things will break all the time. Instead, what you do is that you have a workflow that looks like this. First, you prompt it to find out, okay, what is it exactly that you want to build? But you don't go straight to building. Instead, you have a separate step where you plan out the exact thing that you want to build. And this plan needs to include everything. You kind of want to give it such a good plan where Claude doesn't even need to think. The only thing Claude is doing is building it out. After you've planned it, that's when you start building it. This is the workflow that you want to use at all times. But there are 3 levels to this workflow. Level 1 is to use a feature inside of Claude that's called plan mode. If you head under Claude and you remove ultra think, because that's not the best way to do it, when you want to build something out, you set it to plan mode. So I can write, please make a copy of the website. I have a website folder right here. Ergo VVS. And if I click Shift Tab, you can see I can switch it from auto mode to accept edits on and to plan mode. And plan mode right here is the easiest way to force Claude to create a plan before it does anything. So when I hit enter, it's now going to write a plan first before it starts building. And this is the better workflow to use. And even when you're creating very small things, I'll still recommend that you always use this workflow, because this is the best way to catch errors before they happen. With plan mode, it's also going to ask you follow-up questions like what to call this. I'm just going to call it this. And then you can answer the questions, and that way you force Claude to do exactly what you want. It's then going to ask you questions that you will then answer, and that way you forces Claude to gather the right context before it starts building. We then click submit answers. It's not going to build this out for us. Now you can see it wrote up an entire plan before it does anything. And now we can just write approve. And now it's going to build this out from our plan. That is level 1 of planning things out using this workflow. Level 2 is similar to plan mode, but we do an extra step. In level 2, we write again, I want you to copy the website. But instead of using the default plan mode inside of Claude, we're going to write a .md file plan with substeps use, and then I'm going to use these brackets right here so we can check them off when we complete a step. Then hit enter. Because now, instead of using the default plan mode, we still force Claude to plan it out first, and then we force it to create these sub-steps to break it into an implementation plan. And I'll show you the reason to why we do this in just a second. Then Claude is going to build out a plan like this. Basically, what the plan needs to include is, of course, what you need to do, but then also these steps right here, which is the implementation plan. You can see every time it creates something, it writes an X inside of these boxes. And the reason for why this is so smart is that then the model can keep track of how far it is. You do this when you're building out a, I'll say, medium advanced project, and then you can get Claude to only finish one step at a time. Again, remember what we mentioned earlier about ultrafink being bad, and that a model actually needs a pretty clear context in order to perform the best. That is what we're doing right here. When we have a plan like this, we can get it to create step 0. Then we can reset the context. We can give it this plan again. It's going to get all the minimum context that it needs in order to do a good job. And then we can continue with step 1, then step 2, and then step 3. This is a very important part of building the right foundation. If you let the AI one-shot everything, it's going to build something that's terrible. If you take it step by step and build out a plan like this, you're going to get a much more stable result. This was level 2 of creating plans like this. The important part being is that when you're building something that is complex, you get Claude to finish just one step at a time. So level 2 is to write .md plans. Level 3 takes this to the next level. If you haven't heard about it before, we want to use the Superpowers plugin. If you write /plugins right here in Claude Code, then you can see all of the standard plugins that Claude is offering. The one you want to install is this one right here that is called Superpowers. What this plugin allows us to do is basically force Claude to think like a developer. I'm going to create a new folder right here. I'm going to call it website. Then I can drag this folder in and I can say, I want to build a new landing page on this site. Use the Superpowers skill. And then hit enter. What the superpower skill does is that it basically breaks up a task into multiple different subtasks. And for these different tasks, it's pre-built with skills, so it does a good job. You can see the first one it's using right now is the brainstorming skill. So the brainstorming skill is first going to figure out, okay, what exactly are we building? By the way, this plugin right here is also on GitHub. It has 213,000 stars, so a lot of developers like to use this and vibe code with it. Similar to plan mode, it now asks you questions about exactly what you want. The main difference between plan mode and the superpower skill is that superpowers go in way more detail. So the model is forced, if it's missing just a little bit of context from you, it's forced to ask questions. And again, this is a big part of building the right foundations. After it has used the brainstorming skill, it now uses a skill to create a design spec. And the design spec basically includes all of the information the AI needs for what it needs to create. So the superpowers workflow look like this. First, it does brainstorming, then it writes the design spec, and there we go. Now we can see that the design spec is written. Now we can write continue again, and it doesn't even create it now. It adds another step, which is an implementation plan. Only after these first 3 steps that is when it builds it out. That is the important part about building this foundation first. It then creates this folder right here inside of docs, superpowers, and then specs. And it creates one design spec, that's the one that we looked at before. But then it also creates the implementation plan for the things that it needs to build out. That is why this Superpowers plugin is so powerful. It first brainstorms, then it creates design spec, then also an implementation plan before it even starts building. It's building out this foundation. Do you need to use the Superpower skill every time you build something? Probably not. If you're adding something small to an already existing project, then just like being at level 1 is fine. But when you're building out an entire new project, doing it with superpowers from the start is going to get you much, much better results. That is how you can one-shot websites that look extremely nice like this one. This is made with the superpower skill.